And we are live. I'm Anthony Dream Johnson, President Dream, President Johnson, CEO and founder of 21 Studios, the 21 Convention, and several other organizations. Today with me, I have a special interview, one-on-one, with the one and only Dr. Taylor Burrowes. She's the second woman ever I've interviewed live on the air after Janice Fimengo recently. Dr. Burrowes, welcome to the show. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I have no idea what we're going to talk about today.
We're going to talk about a lot of things, up to about an hour. We'll have a live chat too. You guys can tune in live, or those of you watching live, you can chat, ask questions, and we'll get into it. So Dr. Taylor Burrowes is a semi-retired marriage and family therapist. She has a PhD in marriage and family counseling. She spent 14 years doing that. And I think due to licensing issues and just kind of government bureaucracy a couple years ago, she got out of that. And now she's an independent lifestyle and dating coach. She is well aware of the Manosphere and involved with it through Twitter and things like that, and some of our speakers, like AJ Cortez, Pat Stebbin, guys like that. So we're going to talk to her today about masculinity, femininity, men, women, making women great again. Pretty much any fun topic that comes to mind that I have a list of here that we're going to go through. So first things first, what's your thoughts on the Manosphere? I've heard about you for years now on Twitter and stuff. You've obviously seen a lot of the events we do, a lot of speeches. What's kind of your general impression as a woman, as a former marriage and family therapist?
Well, I just want to clarify something real quick. There were no licensing issues. I just really was having my own personal inner conflict with the issues of the profession and with what I wanted to do as a therapist. And so instead of trying to change the system, I decided not to bother with that headache and to just let my licenses expire and work independently as a consultant. And when I talk to my colleagues, they're like, oh my God, it's so scary to even think about doing that because you put in so much time and money and effort into getting them that to think of letting them go is hard to believe. So I kind of like when I see people's faces when they say, you're retired? I don't understand.
But to clarify, that's exactly what I meant. And I probably should have put some more effort or
that's okay.
Articulation into that because I get it. I'm not a fan of government licensing at all. I get that we have it through many industries, not just yours, obviously well beyond that. And I get the bureaucracy and the headache that can bring. So that's exactly what I meant. And I have no doubt it's a pain in the ass. I know we have other speakers like Ken Curry and Sean Smith that have to deal with these organizations. And I don't like that. I know these men personally, they're very intelligent, very sharp. They have to deal with these bozos in clown world that oversee this stuff. So totally what I meant and did not mean to put anything else into that.
Not to worry, but so back to your question about the Manosphere. I kind of stumbled into it. I think Kyle Trouble was the first person that I was exposed to actually. And then from him, he referenced Rollo Tomassi. And so then, as an academic, I wanted to do my research. So I dug into his website and his articles and essays and everything. And then that kind of quickly spawned, offshoots to pretty much all the big wigs in the Manosphere. But I was really searching for some answers myself because of a lot of that. You can call it cognitive dissonance if you want to, like just sort of being a person who is supposed to be an expert in relationships. But having been through a divorce myself, I was really wondering, what did I get wrong? Why did everything that I learn and what I teach to people, it didn't work for me? And I was wanting to self-examine and see how I could get to the end goal of being in a happy and healthy relationship. And a lot of what I heard, there were at first some things that sort of took me aback and I was shocked that it was being said. But something made me intrigued and curious about wanting to understand it. And once I got to Rollo's content, it made sense to me. There were definitely things that I sort of didn't agree with completely, but for the most part, it rang true. And it sort of was like the missing piece of the puzzle for me.
Got it. Yeah, and how was it just finding a community of men so large on the internet that were talking about this stuff? I mean, you weren't just like the average woman, you were a therapist, a family and marriage therapist. Must have been pretty bizarre finding this huge group of dudes just ranting about this stuff on the internet all day.
Yeah, I didn't get into the Reddit stuff, which I'm glad that I kind of avoided that. I've only been doing like Reddit chats for professional reasons, like to kind of get my content out there and maybe get people marketing to people so that they can seek me for hire. But I avoided a lot of that really dense stuff. That wasn't until people, Rollo in particular, kind of targeted me that I got attacked online. And I'm like, where is this coming from? I really didn't know.
The evil Dr. Babe Love.
Yeah, I didn't know why I was villainized in that way.
So just to be clear too, I
yes.
heard negative things about you, people like you and Pat Stebbin for years from Rollo. And I just didn't care. Like I didn't know who you were or Pat really. And I was like, why does he keep, I don't want to get into this too deep, but it was just such a bitchy pain in the ass to hear this stuff. At the end of the day, I think you're a great person. It's like Pat. Pat's an amazing guy.
Well, thank you. I haven't met Pat yet, but I'm looking forward to meeting him. It'll be great. I think we do share a lot of the same perspective. We have our differences, but I think for the most part, there is a big crossover. But, you know, going back to my experience of sort of being targeted that way, I don't like that word, but
no, I think you're right.
It felt like I was being bullied for no reason. Like I really didn't know why. And it was strange coming from him in particular. Like I was a little bit honored at first because I'm like, wow, this like major guy who I'm admiring his work is like spending a lot of time talking about me. But it, you know, I was kind of new to the whole online thing, and it was kind of hard, you know, my own sort of confidence and anxieties would get triggered by it because they could be pretty harsh and mean. And it did kind of seem like a Mean Girls, but it was like men. So I kind of blocked a lot of people just for my own sanity because it was hard to take. And I let a lot of that go and just sort of focused on my own business because it was kind of hard. It's still hard to be on your own and make it work with your own business online. It's a new thing for someone. I kind of trailblazed in that sense, like coming from a formal private practice or, you know, a practice setting and then trying to translate that to online consultations. It's pretty tricky.
Which legally is very different, right? As I understand it, coaching is different from therapy.
Absolutely. I'm actually, or I was, the deputy chairperson of the Cayman Islands Mental Health Commission for 5 years. And before that, I was on the task force to help write the mental health laws. And my passion was regulation. So there are a lot of ways that I've kind of come full circle and seen things one way and then realized its faults and then tried to correct what I, understood before and make the best of situations. So now I understand why things are really tricky from that point of view, but from like an entrepreneurial standpoint and capitalistic standpoint, this seems to be like the best way for one, the client or the customer to get the best value and service, and for the person who has the expertise and the talent or the skills to offer what they have to offer that's unique.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you got out of the government bureaucracy with that crap. You're able to still do what you want to do what you love.
Yes. It takes a lot of courage. Someone called me anti-fragile yesterday, and I think that's probably quite true, quite accurate. But I am blessed. I have my support system now is pretty much, my boyfriend, and I'm really grateful for having him in my life. And
how dare you have a positive, healthy relationship?
I know.
How dare you?
But it does feel like, a blessing because there were a few years of being single and on my own where they were pretty hard. And so I definitely never take it for granted, and I appreciate it each day I wake up.
Well, let's take a step back. So in your therapy, you specialize in sexual abuse or abuse in general, right? From toxic relationships. I was surprised to see that on the TED Talk and to hear that on your site. I wasn't aware of that.
That's right. And that's kind of what I was referencing, coming full circle, because when you listen to that TED Talk, I sound very SJW. And at the time, I would never have considered myself, because I didn't really know the jargon. I didn't really sort of identify as feminist or SJW or.
And that was like 2016 or something like that?
It was 2014, actually. Okay. So it was the year, the month that I finished my dissertation and got my doctorate. And so there was a lot going on for me, but it was a big event for me because I disclosed publicly in the TED Talk that I was a survivor of abuse. And I didn't really, belabor the point, but I did reference it. And so it was a big moment for me from that standpoint. And being a specialist in sexual abuse recovery, it was, it's difficult. It's something that, you don't always want to advertise, but at the same time, it plays a big role in the work that you do with trauma survivors as well. And if you're not healthy, you can do a lot of re-triggering, and to yourself or to them. So, it's been a long road, but coming full circle from that, I realized that it wasn't the patriarchy's fault and it wasn't misogyny. But at the time, that was pretty much what my dissertation was framed, that sort of perspective. It was framed in that perspective because of my profession and my academic institution and the faculty committee. I wrote 10 topics. I went through 10 years of writing, 6 years, I think, total writing. And each time it got rejected, it was because I wanted to do something more sort of, I don't know, like unique or idiosyncratic. And then they kept trying to push me back into what they wanted me to say. And
it's
so
like a framework of dogma, it sounds like you're having to operate in.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of red tape and a lot of brown nosing that you have to do when you're going through that. And so I understand the validity of being rigorous in your academic and research, steps. But when it comes to that type of profession where I realized they were really enforcing one perspective, and if you thought outside of the box, if you were more conservative or more traditional or more directive in your value system, then you were written off or you were chastised and you were sort of, redirected back towards what they want you to instill in your clients. And they would sort of package it as, what you are meant to do as a healthcare professional. But I just didn't like the way I felt my clients would, not my clients in particular, but people in general, had to sort of get dependent on the system and get pathologized so much. And a lot of the relationships, they weren't working because, you kind of had to placate the woman a lot. And as soon as I started speaking my mind, that's when the tension started,
Yeah, I can imagine. I hear, I talk to Ken Curry a lot and sometimes Sean Smith and Dr. Glover. They're all therapists, different degrees, like you were, family and marriage in the Ken and Glover's case. And they're all rebels in their field. I mean, the fact that they want to think for themselves and, practice what they believe is true, it gets you, I'm sure, a lot of flack. So,
yeah, I mean, my clients that I aligned with, I have such amazing outcomes with them and they get it, but I just don't fit with everybody. But the thing is, I don't want to fit with everybody. I want to target those people who align with me and who I can help the best that I can help. I don't want to be some sort of cookie cutter therapist that just sort of says, the same sort of self-help guru things that you can buy on a bookshelf. My goal is not to work with a million people. My goal is to work with that handful of people that I can help along the way of transformation.
Well, you want to help them heal too, especially if it's from abuse. Yeah, I've been through, my Medusa experience with my ex-wife, I don't know if you've seen that, but that was a whole thing in itself. I'm also a survivor, I'd say, of like pretty extended severe domestic violence. I've witnessed like a huge amount of that. I've only talked about that a little bit on the internet. A lot of that's not resolved yet completely, or it's like it's a fucking huge part of my life.
True.
Pardon my French. Yes. But no doubt that it's very serious, and I think a lot of people that have been through it don't understand that. It's hard to understand if you haven't been through it and seen it firsthand, like how severe it is and what the consequences are, both physically and then psychologically too. Yeah,
it's when you only know it by a textbook, or even if you're a helper and you're helping that person through it, it's still hard to connect completely to what it's like to be in that position as a victim. But at the same time, I don't think you can't help if you haven't experienced the same thing. But it's just hard to really get like the visceral impact if you haven't been through it yourself.
That's right, visceral, in your face and real. Well, let's just shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
You've seen recently, you had your own video on a similar subject, so you got some traffic out of that, which is pretty funny. But what are your thoughts on Make Women Great Again? This is the whole media explosion you saw go down in January and a little bit of February. I mean, this went very viral. We reached almost, with this idea and this convention coming up that you'll be at on a press pass, we reached nearly 100 million people, which was awesome. Like I hoped it would do well when we announced it. And that, of course, was way beyond what I was thinking at the time. I thought it might get picked up by some feminists and some blogs and get angry. And before I knew it, I was like on the news and all over the place. Even my neighbor yesterday was talking to me about it. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on it, just from a conceptual standpoint and what you've observed?
We need to get, I mean, there's definitely a lot of pushback. I like the word is vitriol, right? Like when they come at you like that. But I try to avoid that as much as possible. But so I can only understand like times 100 or whatever that you've been getting. And I admire your tenacity to stick to it. But yeah, I mean, to me, I'm looking forward to this sort of inaugural experience, whatever it is. Like I don't really have like expectations, because you never know what can happen. I mean, look at like the coronavirus right now, and that's sort of changing a lot of things, and we can't predict how it's going to unfold. But I think the intention of it is honorable, obviously, since I'm like participating, and I'm excited to see people come together who are like-minded, and it's really just about the FaceTime with people, you know. I don't know who all is going to be in attendance, but I know the speakers, and I know that the significant others of the male speakers are people that I know and I'm familiar with and I'm friendly with online. So I'd love to be able to be in person with them and have a collective voice or a collective energy, really. You know, I don't want to sound cliche, because at some point we kind of sound like the SJWs talking about us advocating for our position. But it's really just, you know, trying not to be afraid to, I mean.
I'm still getting over a cold or a flu. Fuck.
I know, and such a bad time to be sick. So just take care of yourself. But I was actually reading Jack Murphy's Democrat to Deplorable book.
Yeah.
And a lot of what he was talking about sort of is relevant, right? And that kind of effect.
I'm actually interviewing him tomorrow on the Redman Group. Yeah,
awesome.
He's awesome. I like him a lot.
I'm excited to meet him and his girlfriend as well. So
the red hen. Yeah, she's
that's
cool.
right.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that experience is probably similar. I mean, obviously not in the presidential campaign aspect, but being able to come together and congregate in a way that we feel like we're free to do so. Like we shouldn't have to be afraid of our livelihoods or the reactions of people. I mean, we're not doing anything wrong. We just have an opinion or have different values, and it only impacts, you know, us. And
well, to put some meat to this, I mean, we're not just getting vitriol. I've been getting like death threats of violence, all kinds of disgusting comments too, voicemails. Like I got a lot of this last year when I had my spat with Rollo from his really hardcore fan base. Not the wider guys who just like the book, but the guys who are like dedicated. That was my first experience really getting some serious hate. And then Make Women Great Again was like 100 times that. But it's not just the hate, it's like pretty serious stuff. They're trying to find the venue, they're trying to cancel us. They're petitioning the mayor of Orlando to try to cancel us. Orlando's
I'm not surprised.
City. So yeah, it's just nuts that they can't even. I'm going to do an email about it, a newsletter to the 22 convention fans. There's like a whole little email list. I think you're on it.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about that they have. It's just amazing how little respect they have for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Like we just want to get together and talk. It's a conference. It's not like a rally.
Exactly.
It's not like a protest. We just want to talk.
To be honest, I made this term up, I think. I'm not sure. Like some people accuse you of stealing ideas, but I just used it spontaneously about value-driven therapy, right? Like we need to have an avenue to create variation in perspectives. And if you don't give people an option to sort of choose what's best for them, then you're really enforcing that dogma, that you know, indoctrinating people into one mentality. And it just seems so distorted. But I don't know. I think that, you know, when we're there and we're able to talk in that sort of well-organized setting, because I've heard really great things about the way that you organize your events.
I'm pretty good.
I know you are. But, you know, the countless amount of conferences that I have attended in my professional career, eventually you just tune out because it's just the same repackaged stuff. And half of it is just, you know, things that you have to do, like hoops you have to jump through in order to continue your licensing or just networking and feeling like you're active in your profession. But when we don't talk about the values of how to be a happy and healthy individual and how to live fully and how to facilitate a relationship, you know, whether it's a family relationship or an intimate relationship or a friendship, it doesn't matter. Like if we don't talk about the values behind that, we're missing a huge part of the human experience. Just to intellectualize it makes no sense. That's what I didn't like about therapy as a formal profession. And so the rebels are the ones that are infusing those value-driven perspectives into the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about 21 Convention. It is really well run. Like, I'm not surprised that you heard that. But more than that, there's like a magic to it. And it's hard to explain or market that in the internet, but it's really powerful and it's real at the events. And I think a big part of it is the freedom that you're talking about that these speakers have to engage in things like talking about their values, not just intellectual content, but like why do they believe that? Why is it important to them? And what the magic is I don't really dictate anything they say. There's a few limits, like you can't endorse communism, feminism, racism, like really extreme shit at the convention. Outside of that, the speakers are free to talk about whatever they want. Sometimes they'll ask me about cursing and stuff, and I kind of laugh because I curse typically the most, me and Hunter Drew. But outside of that, I'm firmly, not only do I not dictate what the speakers say, I'm like fiercely opposed to that. Any kinds of censorship or cold censorship or silencing of what they want to talk about, I'm like, no, speak your mind. Now use common sense to stay on YouTube, but beyond that,
right.
speak your, not just your mind, speak your heart. Like, what do you actually believe?
That is so important. And I think we need to have opportunities to do that other than just real private, intimate settings where you can feel, okay, I can let my guard down and say what I really think, right? Like being able to have some kind of, not public, but, you're not sort of, on a soapbox and announcing it in the street, but, you're having a private event, but it's public and you feel like you're a normal person. You're not being marginalized. But you mentioned the sort of magic to the event, and it reminds me of TEDx. So if you've ever been involved, or if someone's ever been involved in TEDx, there's like a huge momentum, a massive energy about it, and you can't really explain it unless you attend. And when you attend, sometimes it's like a small group of people. Like for mine, there were only 100 attendees allowed, but at the same time, it's globally live streamed, right? So they have to actually apply to be a part of it. And being there and a part of these talks can be really transformative. But, and this is how it's different, is that it's highly regulated. Like they are very strict about how you talk, what you talk about.
Oh God, that's stupid. I hate that. I didn't know that. I'm not surprised. I can't say I'm surprised, but I didn't really know that for a fact. That sucks.
Yeah, you have TEDx coaches, and the TEDx coaches are
they're going to coach you, are they?
They're trained, and they begin to make it homogenous, right?
Wow.
So this is the thing, is like the things that you can have good things about it, which is the energy, and sure, it helps a lot of people, but then there's this other side to it. And so to be able to have both is so important, to be able to have common sense, common decency, but no real restrictions on the expression of values and thoughts, and to have it presented in a way that it's not just grassroots, it's a proper, well-organized event that helps to elevate its significance for the people involved.
I'll say this compared to what you experienced I agree with you 100%. I'll say this compared to your experience with TEDx. I'm a dictator for freedom, if that makes any sense, because I really hate that kind of groupthink dogma. I think that's why some of the feminists got so angry. They really fixated, for example, on the sales page. I wrote a lot of the copy on it, me and one of my guys, and I call it feminism. I called it toxic feminist dogma. I think those are the actual words, toxic feminist dogma. And just putting those together, it's not that complicated, toxic feminist dogma, but it's rare that you see that on the internet, especially like on a website that's like this big thing and has these speakers involved. And because I think it just hit the nail on the head. It really hit the truth, and it made them so angry because it was true, not because it was false. So it's just fun to see that and poke the bear.
Yeah, I mean, all power to you. I try not to trigger them, and I block them as much as I can. But when I do speak my mind, I still get a lot of pushback. And funny, coming from a small country, the Cayman Islands is 65,000 people.
Is that where you were born and raised?
I was raised until I was 12, and then I went to the States for school, and then I went back after I was an adult for the last 10 years. So I just moved again to the States. So my father's Jamaican, or was Jamaican.
I saw a picture of him today in there. He would have been really old, 106, right?
106 today. So
wow.
Yeah, he was born in 1914, but Caribbean background. I actually just sent off my Ancestry.com DNA. So I'm excited to see all the intricacies of my background. But all I know is my father was Jamaican with British influence. And so I'm very Caribbean, even though I spent so much time in the States, which is why I sound the way that I do. But being from Cayman and practicing in Cayman and you know, having a life there, people are highly involved in your life. And so with Facebook and stuff, when I make my posts, some of these women who are very sort of verbal about their feminist perspectives, they really push back on me and they shame me, you know, they're like, how dare you? You're a professional. You're making women be like, go back to the 1950s and all the hard work of feminism is reversed and da 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 da. I don't know. It's there's something about
and you're a coach and a former therapist. You're not like, I mean, I can get why they hate me organizing a lot of you together, but what you're doing is basically a simplified form of therapy or just coaching or counseling.
Yeah, I mean, I might be very clear to the people I work with that these are the values, and they seek me out because they agree with them. So I'm not trying to convert people or force people to think a certain way, but I'm allowed to state my opinions like they're fact. It doesn't mean that I'm, being prejudicial or being misogynistic, right? Like they love to throw that out at you, but it's this weird thing, like as if you're taking what they've sort of sacrificed themselves for over the past 20, 30 years.
Well, there's an irony to it too, because these people that scream at you and scream at me, they're going to scream 2 seconds later about choice. All you're doing is presenting different choices and options to people and ideas. Right. And the reality is they hate that.
They do. And I think part of it, and I don't know if this is a big part or not, but part of it is they don't understand entrepreneurial businesses. They don't understand how marketing works. And they don't understand that branding aspect, that you can't speak all tentatively and wishy-washy and get any type of success in your business. Like you have to stand for something. And aside from spiritual Twitter, I guess they're the exception. But, for someone in our position, I think it's important to just be okay standing by your opinion and presenting it in that way. But they're responsible for taking offense, and we can't control that. Yeah.
Let's get into some more nitty gritty details here.
Sure.
Just going through, your channel, some of your ideas and stuff. So I saw you talk about grieving, and that came to mind. Well, there's a couple reasons that came to mind. Something I've been looking at lately and studying, different self-help books, psychology books, things like that. Mm-hmm. But grieving came to me, or struck me as a term and a concept that is kind of taboo in the manosphere, and there's a few of these. Love, romance, even beauty to an extent. AJ Cortez would be an exception to that. But generally these ideas or these concepts like love, romance, grieving, they're taboo. They're not considered maybe masculine enough or bro enough or whatever the fuck. Pardon my French. I don't know how much he cursed, but talk to me about grieving. Like, why should young men or even older men, why should they care about this idea, and why is it important? Especially to say heal from a toxic relationship or something like that.
Well, just to be blunt, unfortunately, mental health or mental illness affects men tremendously. It's not a female issue, right? Like if we look at the rates of suicide, men commit suicide, or I should really say kill themselves, more frequently than women do. Yep. And we have to not just understand why, but we have to be able to give them an opportunity to prevent it. And that means they have to talk about their, experiences if they're struggling. And I don't think he will mind if I mention it, but you see how Goldman went through an tragic experience this week with his brother. And, he's a good friend of mine, and we saw him recently and I spoke to him. We actually, and this might be a little bit strange to hear, but my mother she's quite esoteric. And so I believe in a lot of stuff. And I'm like, Dennis, we need to call Goldman. Let's check on him. Maybe he wants to meet up with us. And that happened.
Well, he was in Arizona where you're at now, right?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad that we reached out to him that day. And he was like, oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened. Da, 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 da. And so I'll just summarize because he's posted about it. Like, I won't say the whole thing, but just his brother killed himself last week. And so he's been going through grieving. And Goldman is a very strong, masculine man who's been through a ton of experiences, who understands the human, dynamic. And he even was unfamiliar with this process of grief, and he needed to process it and reach out and ask questions. And it's not easy to know what to do when you experience it. It's like, should I be angry? Should I be sad? Should I talk about my feelings? Should I rage? Should I go sleep with women? What do I do?
Yeah.
So we need to make it visible. We need to help men who are struggling understand what they can do that's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, what Goldman went through was pretty serious, and to see that, I've seen him talk about it too in public, and it's good to see that. The one thing I actually should take a step back on, though, is that the grieving process is usually applied for the red pill stuff. Just taking down this red pill, that concept and that idea. But it's nothing like what you're talking about, which, for example, in Goldman's case, is the loss of a family member.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you could share that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's important because I'm not a mental health professional officially anymore, but it doesn't take away my PhD and my expertise in the matter. And so, that's part of why, I mean, some people might call me like a men's rights advocate or something like that. It's both. I'm both for healthy women and healthy men. And I don't like to see anyone in trouble and struggling without the help that they need. And when it comes to, in your situation, let's just get more specific to being married to someone or being with someone who had BPW or someone who's very toxic and unhealthy, the grief that comes from having to deal with that situation it's horrific. And so I know that firsthand, being a therapist in couples counseling with people who were in that situation. And it was never an easy case to deal with. And whether you end up getting divorced or the best you can, sort of salvaging what you can with custody, with finances or whatever, it's still a process to heal from that. And then just in general, like having the red pill experience where you look back at your life and you have to kind of grieve the loss of all that investment emotionally in the blue pill and everything that's happened. Like all of that is all it's like the shifting paradigms, right? And so we can relate to each other probably more than we're different. I mean, some of the hate that I've gotten has been, well, you were an ex-feminist and you were an SJW and you were divorced. And like, yeah, but I've brought it all together. I've taken the red pill. I understand now more about the mistakes that I made and how to correct them and how to share that with people so that they don't make the same mistakes. So I wouldn't villainize anyone for trying to speak about their experience to help people. And I'm surprised when people do that with me or with you or with whomever.
Yeah. Even Janice Fumengo gets a lot of that. We're talking about Professor Fumengo before this, the one, the woman I interviewed recently in the Redman group. She's a feminist for a long time. I think in her 20s, even into her 30s, so a very long time. And she eventually became a professor of literature up in Canada and stuff. Excuse me. But for her to now she's one of the most prominent female anti-feminists in the world, especially as a professor. And she still, I think, gets some hate from this, especially from the feminists who see her as a traitor and whatnot. Or even people in the Manosphere are skeptical of a woman advocating so vehemently on behalf of men. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. But I think it carries actually a lot of credibility, like you're saying. You've been on the other side. You've seen a lot of that stuff firsthand. You get why. And so with Janice, she said the same thing. You get why they think this way because you've been there. You've been through that same kind of thought process.
Yeah.
In terms of grieving, I think with my own experience with my ex-wife and that whole debacle of a BPD chick who turned out to be a prostitute and all this other crazy stuff I went through in the speech, it was a lot more. That was the first time I ever had to grieve from a intimate romantic relationship failing at such a colossal speed and severity, and it took a long time to heal from that. I'd say at this point, it's been a little bit over 4 years as of the other day. I have my 4-year single anniversary. That was kind of interesting.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it took, initially I was in a rush to get over it. That was kind of the emotional or instinctive urge. And looking back on it, it was ridiculous. I mean, that was a 4.5-year relationship, which isn't too long, but pretty significant amount of time. Mm-hmm. And it took time to heal from that and get over it. And, banging chicks did not fix that overnight. Because in the Manosphere, there's a little pickup artist saying, go bang 10 other women after a relationship fails. And I had that a long time ago. And that does not cure all the pain and the kind of trauma from that. That's going to linger. I mean, you
Right.
spend years with somebody, male or female, from whatever perspective you're coming at for that, dynamic. It takes time. I don't know the specifics of your divorce and how long your marriage was, but yeah, it's stuff serious. And to heal from it properly and not just have some bravado about it, like, yeah, fuck that bitch. No, it takes time. And it's real, and it's a therapeutic process to grieve and feel that kind of pain and not just kind of overlook it or dismiss it.
No, you're right. And I would ask you, what was it that helped you heal from it?
A big issue would just be time and patience. Yeah, I kind of knew that even at the beginning, that time is something that's a commonly, it's a common idea, common phrase. I think there's actually some weight to it. Time maybe doesn't heal all, but it's a big factor in healing. So just the amount of time that's gone by. In addition to that, I'd say the patience to not rush into another relationship. I've had several opportunities to do that with girls that I actually cared about and had an emotional investment in. And for better or for worse, I refrained from doing that. I think it was ultimately for better. I wasn't at a point where I was ready to get into another relationship that was exclusive like that. Just wasn't ready for it. Still kind of grieving over that loss and over I'd say, understanding of even what the fuck happened. Understanding what happened, not just with her, which was initially my focus. Like, okay, something just blew up in my face. I need to understand what's in front of me. I had to become more introspective and understand that. Like, why did I get into that relationship? What kind of weak points or kinks in the chain from a very severely traumatized childhood led me to this happening, and didn't happen before her. I didn't have any toxic relationships before her to speak of. I was just in college learning how to pick up girls at bars and stuff, having a good time, and then I landed up with this crazy hooker after a couple of years of just going out picking up girls at bars and stuff. So it's just taken time, I think, to really step back and appreciate all that, and even not just time and patience, but also study.
Exactly. Yeah.
Guys like Richard Grannon, for example, I'm a big fan of his. One of our speakers now. He's a YouTuber. He has a big channel.
Okay.
He focuses a lot on CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which I think the Medusa experience contributed to, but I had pre-existing before that. And I would also say too, as a final note, that the experience of being with her and then splitting up and leaving her, that was really the awakening point ultimately to realizing I had pretty severe trauma that was still lingering. Then she was really just like an expression of that more so than a contributor to it. Although she was a contributor to it as well, or the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting a lot of very complex points in a very articulate way that I don't know all the audience is going to understand the complexities of, right?
Yep.
But
they can buy a ticket and they'll learn all about it.
and that's true.
Yeah.
But when you talk about trauma, you can feel or think that you're healed from trauma because it's sort of repressed or suppressed. And you can go about your business, but you make mistakes. And it's because of this suppressed trauma, the reaction to trauma, that you make those mistakes. And the only way that you can heal from that is to do that self-examination and to take the time and exploration to do that, to take responsibility for your choices. And it's so hard to and I get in trouble so much for saying that. Like, I'm not saying it's the victim's fault. Trust me, I'm not. But if you don't take responsibility for the mistakes that you've made along the way, then you will never be able to sort of wrap the trauma up into a resolution for you to go forward in a healed perspective. So, I mean, that's what you need to do. And you described it so well.
Yeah, that's a resolution. That's a really good way to put it. Makes a lot of sense. And I think I'm getting to that point at 4 years now. People think I'm like this playboy, which there is some truth to. Like, I like women a lot. And if I'm not in a committed relationship, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out and have a good time, to put it simply. But I think actually relationships are a really great thing. I look forward to doing it. I really want to have a family. That's actually one of the main reasons, probably the main reason, that I actually married her in the first place. In addition to being in love, so I thought, and all these things. And even at 31, especially as a guy, my peak fertility, my eggs are not dying, so I'm not in a rush, and I'm really taking my time to be patient. And it's funny because the longer I'm single, and then women find that out, the girls find that out, they get really, the longer that period of time is, which is 4 years now, they get like curious, like, why are you so single? Why are you single?
Why are you so single?
Yeah. Well, it's really like it's captivating to them because now they want to pry, they want to learn, which is good. That works in my favor. At this point, I'd say I'll probably be in a relationship. I had this conversation with a girl the other day that wants to date me, who's pretty good candidate for it, like a lot younger than me. She's like 22, 23. We've been seeing each other on and off for a while, but I'm like, look, I'm still like 1 to 3 years out from even, seriously considering a relationship.
What does that 1 to 3 years contain that you need to have happen?
Two things. In a simple level, it's just time. I want some more time to kind of be on my own. I'm starting to enjoy that more and really, really be okay with that at like a deeper and deeper level. In addition, I just want to be older. I want to be closer to 35, and I want to take that time in between then and now to continue working on myself super, super hardcore. From lifting weights and working out to just building a business and being an entrepreneur. I've done that for a long time now, 13 years, but I think I'm still beginning to hit my stride, and Make Women Great Again is an example of that. I've been successful for a long time, reaching millions of people a year, but not 100 million in a month. So I'm still very young. I think at 31, I'm not as old as I think or feel sometimes.
No, that's very young.
Yeah.
And plus, you're being very selfless in letting her know that, because you could very easily sort of, have a gray area. Like this will be a fun relationship for now. Yep. But at 22, if she's a good candidate, then you're saying, I don't want to keep you from finding your forever guy, your real relationship. Yeah. So, carry on. Let's just move on and say what it is.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. And she recognized that. And I just have enough women in my life, and I'm confident enough in myself to go find new women too. And I want to, that I'm just not worried about it. So I really enjoyed the sex and being with her and stuff. I'm like, look, I just want to be alone. And if you're not okay with that, it's fine. What'll probably end up happening is she'll boomerang back. Honestly, she'll boomerang back around in my life. I'll see her again in 6 months when she misses me or something. And that's fine.
Well, you never know.
Yeah,
you could be ready then. You could be like, I've hit all the points that I need to hit, and I care about her enough, and she's perfect enough that I'm gonna go for it.
Perfect enough. That's pretty good. Perfect enough. I like that. That's a good concept.
Yeah, it's hard to get to that point, and we read so many things online and Reddit and Twitter and whatever it is, all these blogs about what type of woman you should be looking for, what type of man you should be looking for.
That's something too that I'm still, even at 31, I'm really starting to, even independent of actually physically and firsthand experiencing women, I'm really starting to think about what I want. And taking that a lot more seriously. A lot like what women are told to in these like magazines and shit. Like, what do you want, girl? Like all this stuff. It's my theory that actually men should really apply a lot of what they see in these feminist magazines. All this strong, independent, this mantra that I don't think is very healthy for women.
No, I agree.
But for men, they should actually look at these magazines and kind of reverse engineer it. And it's actually pretty good advice if you're a man.
I have
a strong, independent man.
Exactly. I know. I think I see the rationale there. That might actually work as a good sort of default mode to get some advice. But speaking of advice, I have this new men's on like a Telegram chat group, and people criticize me all the time for being like the female dating coach or whatever, talking to men. But I'm very clear about, I'm not a man. I'm not going to tell you how to be a man, and I'm not going to replace your male role models. But if you want to seek my expertise because, you feel comfortable with me, you feel like we relate. A lot of men are like, I really like what you say rings true to me. I'm aligned with your values and how you talk about these things. And I'm just really good at working with men. And when we're talking in this chat group, it's really nice to see the relevance from other people's experience, right? It's not just me talking one-on-one with a man, it's them talking to each other. And so that's another way to get that increased access to masculine influences that they can have that camaraderie and learn from. But it's a very common thing that they have a hard time keeping to their standards and sort of having a firm line on their boundaries and expectations. For women, it's almost like men who are there. I think they're masculine, but they've obviously been influenced by blue pill thoughts growing up or whatever in society. And so they have this guilty conscience about creating this sort of hard line with a woman or saying no to a woman or having these expectations
their favorite word.
Yeah, exactly. So it does take some time to deconstruct that and allow them to assert themselves and feel like they're worth it, that they should be expecting better for their significant others. And it's so easy and I don't mean this in a contrite way, but it's so easy for these women to get their hooks into these men And it always really saddens me when I'm hearing stories about these women who want to run their lives and just control them and belittle them, really break them down. And then they become attached and they're in love with them. That, you know, that it's so hard to get them to a place where they let it go and they move on.
It's really unhealthy and dysfunctional, I know. And it's becoming, I'd say, more and more common with feminist blue pill type thinking in America and the West and stuff, and it sucks. And when I go to places, like I spent a lot of time last year in Poland. I went there twice for the convention.
That's right.
Once to scout it, once to do the convention. And you don't see, well, generally speaking, you don't see any of that crap. You see, it was interesting. You saw a lot of PDA, a lot of, public displays of affection that I hadn't even seen probably since high school at this level, since like the early 2000s or mid 2000s. I was in high school. And it was just so awesome to see it. It was so positive. And fundamentally, I believe that a place like Poland, places in Eastern Europe, these countries, they have much better gender relations between men and women. Right down, not just from family formation and marriages and stuff like that, but right down to just boyfriends and girlfriends walking around. They get along. And in Orlando, where I live, you don't see that anymore. It's weird. No. It's really weird.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen much of that since being in the States and in Phoenix. But, somebody was asking me not too long ago about the relationships in Asia, because Dennis and I went to like Vietnam, Thailand, Bali, so like Indonesia. And there are a lot of expats obviously in those areas, digital nomads and stuff. But looking at the local people, a lot of the dating coaches, talking about Kyle, he talks a lot about dating in foreign places and looking for girlfriends or wives in Asia and Europe and whatever. But it was hard to get a good read on what the relationships were like. Generally, I only really spoke to or spent time with the friends that we were meeting up with. And a lot of the friends that we have over there from Twitter have Asian girlfriends. So it's more of like the people that we knew, we could kind of observe them, but the just general people that were in Thailand and Vietnam, I didn't really see a lot of PDA.
Yeah, in Poland I did, and I made it a point to go out to the bars and the clubs at night and stuff like that. The time zone was all screwed up for me for a while.
Yes.
So I was out till 3, 4 in the morning every night. I'd work all day, going to the hotels and doing whatnot and emails and stuff. And I spent a lot of time out meeting a lot of people. Wearing my hat, make women great again, make America great again. They loved it. Sometimes they were skeptical. They thought it was a feminist thing. They were like, "Are you feminist?" Yeah, they hate feminism. Like generally, they make fun of it. The women and men both. So they'd ask me very aggressively, like, "Are you a feminist?" Almost like they're investigating me. I'm like, "No, not even a little bit." I'm like, "Oh, okay, we like you then." So it was amazing.
I was just thinking one of the questions that reporter asked me in the email that you linked me with was, what is feminism to you? And I'm like, that's going to be a good one to answer. There are a lot of interesting questions she posed, but I'll have to take some time and really answer them. But I don't know, like for us, I think it's become something so volatile and violent. But I think if you ask a lot of people that, they'll say some things that are probably outdated, like women's rights and having a vote and stuff like that. But it's gone so far beyond that now.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, feminism today, the reason she's asking you that, it's like it's a very shape-shifting, slippery thing that you can't even define, because it means just whatever they want it to mean if they're hardcore feminists. And if you ask, I was saying recently to somebody, if you ask 10 feminists, what they think about feminism or what it means to them, you got 10 different answers. Because I think, and one of the reasons is it's hiding an agenda. It's hiding a lot of toxicity and violence behind it. Like I've been getting more death threats from feminists than I've ever had in my life. Threats of violence, protesting. They're really trying to find me and like where I live, like the convention. It's sick stuff. And they all want to, and then they want to talk to you about tolerance and choice and all this crap. And it's all not just nonsense, but it's hypocritical nonsense that's opposite of what they really believe. They're really prone to violence and screaming at you. It's weird. Yeah.
I don't know if this sounds a little too macro, but coming from my background and expertise in trauma, and it's actually it would be like the TEDx talk 2 that I would do. It's actually the opposite of what I said. It's not patriarchy that's caused all this sexual abuse. It is feminism as it's morphed into a traumatic experience that's been internalized in most women. Yeah. And so this anger and this vitriol that we're experiencing from these types of feminists is a traumatic response. If you think about someone who's been traumatized being triggered, like a flashback or something, they get crazy. And so you want to understand that they are like that because of a trauma that they experienced, and not blame them because it's a symptom of the trauma. But at the same time, you kind of have to identify it first, and they're not willing. They're in denial about the trauma that feminism caused inside of them.
I agree. And so it sounds like you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, they're basically transferring or weaponizing their trauma into a whole movement that's supposed to be this, glamorous, very positive, very feminine, nice thing. And I think the reality is very, very different from that. So they're kind of like, almost like filling it with their trauma. And then they're just like, oh, it's this nice thing, but it's super toxic.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like the, how the victim identifies with their perpetrator often, like the Stockholm syndrome kind of thing. So they've kind of aligned with feminism. They defend it to its death, But honestly, it's more that feminism is the perpetrator for these women in their lives. And I wrote very early on, a blog post or whatever about my Dear Joan letter to feminism, and that got some traction. But I probably have to still edit it or revise it. But it was true. It was like my sort of grieving letter to myself after breaking up with feminism, because this is what, it took for me this, and it's not
that's a big breakup. I'm happy for you.
Yeah. Thank you. But it's not about blaming all my choices on feminism. It's explaining them. And there's a difference when someone isn't willing to take responsibility for their choices. And I'm asked all the time, even now that I'm not practicing formally, how could you be a marriage therapist and be divorced? How could you be single and be a marriage therapist? How could you, it's never enough for people, right? Like, you're never good enough to tell people what to do unless you live it yourself. And there's obviously truth to that. But I think that, for the most part, there's just a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to achieve a healthy, stable lifestyle, but no kind of map that's given to us to teach us how to do that anymore.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. I have more on my little notepad I was writing down as I was going through your content. So talk to me about how women today can do better. Young women today that are still, other than just abandoning feminism and saying, all right, this is actually a pretty negative movement, what can your average 20-something young woman today in America, what can she do better? What is she getting wrong with, say, her dating life? That might include a lot of swiping on Tinder, or these short-term relationships that last 6 months at a time.
Sure.
You call it serial monogamy, things like that. So what are some of the issues you see young women today doing from that perspective?
Well, I love that I'm getting some young women in my not practice, but in my business now. I have a lot of yes, I know it's hard. It's a long time, but I do my best to be transparent there. I have a lot of women my age or older, 35 to 65, whatever, that I have worked with. But now I'm getting younger women in their late teens, early 20s, which is a really good sign. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity to help prevent things in their life from going awry. And so with those women, I'm trying very hard to help encourage them. It's not that they have to choose either or, because, it might seem like I'm saying don't strive for, a professional career. I'm not saying that. I mean, there is validity in having an intelligent woman who is successful. But my whole point is, do not let that interfere with your personal life. Always make sure that your personal life with your, if you're married or if you've got kids, don't let that take the place of your spouse and your family. So first and foremost, don't marry your career. Marry the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with.
How dare you? That sounds like toxic patriarchy.
Exactly. But I mean, I think in order to encourage that mindset in women, they have to recognize that life isn't about what can you achieve? What can you win? How do you need to prove yourself? And so women are really put under this microscope to prove themselves, that they're capable and that they're good enough. And so teaching women that they're good enough, just focusing on themselves, being healthy women, prioritizing their family of origin, A lot of times people are so quick to leave the house and go to college that they leave all that behind, and then they're just focused on individual pursuits. So it's about the connection between what really matters in life, who you care about, and maybe even your community, your church. But honestly, it's about really creating that healthy equilibrium so that you're a stable woman who values the simple life. Like, you don't have to go out and party. You don't have to go out and win awards or make tons of money. So
it's amazing. I hear a lot lately from women on the internet. They message me, usually sometimes in public, people like you and others on Twitter I follow, but a lot of them in private, Instagram DMs, Facebook DMs, things like that. And a lot of them there's actually a lot of women out there, surprised. They actually really value motherhood and family and marriage. And they're almost ashamed to say in public, for whatever reason in the first place, feminism and whatnot. But even if they do speak up, like on my Facebook profile or whatever I'm posting about how stupid feminism is, they get yelled at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the internet. It's on your phone or your computer, but it's like people will scream at them. These other feminists and stuff, and even men, these white knights, they think these are fake accounts. I think these are women that actually want to start, because what you're talking about sounds to me a lot like just prioritization, which is what I'm advocating. Like, I'm doing my speech at 22Con about motherhood first, like America first, so motherhood first. And if a woman doesn't want to do that and prioritize motherhood at 23 years old in family formation, I'm not, forcing you not to, but I think for most women, a lot of them will be happier doing that. Just due to biology and fertility and eggs and all these things, like very simple stuff you can learn in high school that they're not taught anymore, and they're told the opposite with an agenda. Choice, choice, as long as you make the choice I want you to make. And it's like, I think that's actually not a good choice, and this is a better choice in most circumstances, or many circumstances. So yeah, it's a lot to me. It sounds like just prioritization.
Yeah, that, and I focus on vetting. So really teaching women how to vet for a significant other versus dating, because I think dating is so subjective, and you can learn a lot about a person prior to even meeting them. It used to be that things were arranged, or your parents would sort of know someone.
I saw you on Twitter, actually, I think yesterday or today. I might even pull that up. You were saying women should save sex for relationships. I thought that was interesting. Yeah,
definitely.
How dare you?
How dare I?
They shouldn't just go on Tinder and just bang whatever they want left and right?
No, definitely not. Don't talk. Get off Tinder, ladies. Get off.
Let me see if I can pull this up, actually.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
I say that a lot. And, I even the women that I speak to, I tell them, I'm not going to belittle you for your choices if you're okay with them, but I'm going to be very clear that I don't believe it's healthy for you to be having sex before you're in a relationship. So what I teach women, which is actually really hard to explain, is one, you're going to be vetting for a partner, and you might be getting to know people. So you might be talking to someone on the phone. You might have someone in your class that, you're friendly with, but you're not dating them. You're just getting to know them first. And then once you identify who you actually like, you need to sort of put all your eggs in that basket, so to speak, and not pursue like you're pursuing him and he's not pursuing you. But when that is pursued, you are exclusive with them. So you might not have a guarantee yet from that guy that he's exclusive, but it shouldn't matter. You need to know what you stand for. And ultimately, if you vetted him appropriately, he should have integrity, and you should know that he's choosing you, even if he's not explicit about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually saw you tweet too, I think, about earning exclusivity from men. Or is that a video you did on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, that got some attention too.
I'm sure it did. These are not topics that young women are talked about or told to talk
How
about.
dare you even say that a woman should earn his exclusivity?
Exactly. You
this
can't
is a right.
never mind whatever you said in the video for however many minutes you went on about it. You can't even talk about the subject because that's just treason to the fempire. I mean, how dare you? How dare a woman do anything to earn a man's affection or his exclusivity, or do anything to please him and make him happy, like making him a sandwich? I was telling you that Janice K. Mango jokes with me about that a lot because she knows it's just funny. Yeah. But she actually does it. She's actually married and she makes her husband sandwiches all the time. And that's just what they do. And that's I think it's actually very positive.
I do too.
Food. Yeah.
And I've been posting pictures of the meals that I'm making and stuff. And that reporter actually asked me something about that and like, what does it mean to be a trad wife or whatever? And I do not consider myself that at all. Yeah. I hope that that's not the impression that people have of me. I consider myself more like a middle ground. Like I'm a modern woman who achieved a PhD and a successful career, but I've, corrected the things that I needed to correct, and I'm able to prioritize my relationship and my future family, right? So that's the way that you can kind of try to not have it all, because I would do things differently if I could start over, but I'm definitely not a trad wife. So I think it's important to, you don't have to be the one that cooks. But I said this to my group, in my men's group. They were asking about it. Is it a deal breaker if she doesn't cook? And I said, it's one thing if she tries to cook, she's not that great at it, but she wants to get better, then that's good. If she refuses to cook and she wants to just go do things that, take her away from the home or whatever, just to be selfish and self-indulgent, that's no good. But if she's someone who, like, you're a team and you're trying to juggle everything, and so you kind of, you sort of make a compromise where if you like to cook, you'll cook sometimes, or she'll cook sometimes, or maybe like you pick up food or you get home delivery. So, you don't have to cook all the time in order to be a good partner, but it's important for you to be willing to pick up the slack or to serve your partner if you love them.
Yeah, that sounds way too level-headed and rational for the Manosphere. Sorry, that totally, we have to boot you out now. Actually, there's this guy, he's saying you should be a speaker at our next convention.
Oh, so, well, that would be an honor.
Yeah, that would be, wow, I'd get some flack for that. We'll see. And actually, as I told you, I actually intend to have female speakers at 22 convention in the future, after the inaugural one. And I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. We might do an all women's one, so the ultimate womansplaining event. I think that would be really awesome to do the mansplaining convention of the century, and then follow it up with the womansplaining convention of the century. I love these terms. I love actually taking the feminists, these toxic terms that they try to vilify us with, and just beat them over the head with it. That's why I did all that with the sales page.
Yeah, so. I mean, I get the marketing, the branding aspect to it, but to me, I mean, I would never want to invade male space. See, that's not my intention at all. But I also think that, like, I went to one of my first sort of Manosphere events was Mike Cernovich's Guerrilla Mind seminar in New York, and that's when I met Goldman originally, and Alexander, and Dr. Ralph, and Mike, and Ed. And we had a great time. And I was even sitting there thinking, like, these guys are great. I would love to jump in and have a presentation as well, because I mean, I'm very trained in presenting to groups of people with like law firms and accounting firms, but they're all men partners. And, so I know how to hold my own, but I'm still feminine and female. But I think that if the opportunity arose, I would just do my best, and I could, try to make it relevant to whoever was in the audience. But I no longer feel ultimately the need to go out and achieve, whereas I used to before. And that's kind of where I've come to my balance as a woman, that I feel like I've proven myself, and I didn't really need to do half the things that I did to prove myself. But all that really matters to me is having a simple, peaceful lifestyle with Dennis and being happy and healthy. It's that simple.
Sounds like you're a victim of internalized patriarchy and misogyny. I'm sorry you have this condition. We have to cure you with more feminism.
Horrible. It's what can I say? I want other people to experience it.
Yeah, it actually reminds me, a few minutes ago you were talking about the same concept. Basically, you said that you didn't want to speak to men from the perspective of being a man, because obviously you're not a man. And that actually makes a lot of sense to me. And I got a lot of flack from these women that hate, Make Them Great Again, 22 convention and stuff. And they're like, how dare you talk to women about being a woman? It's like, one of the reasons I didn't do 22 convention sooner, because I had the idea in 2015 when I bought the domain and basically thought about doing a women's convention. I held off for 5 years on it because I didn't have the concept like this, to where we could actually speak to women in a way that made sense, because we're not women. I have no idea what it's like to be a woman. Right. I don't know now. I didn't know yesterday. I won't know tomorrow or ever. And the whole convention is not coming from that perspective. It's mansplaining. So it's what we think about women, what we think about female nature, what we're observing in culture, things that we think women get right, things that they get wrong today. Maybe in the past they did better. And, also too, like Janice Fiamengo, she's focused a lot observing what we're doing with this conference, that it's just men having preferences, men, husbands, and fathers. Mm-hmm. Most of the speakers are married and stuff. And, men, of course, have an idea of what they want. Sometimes women actually see better than that. They see through things. But at the end of the day, it's men are speaking up in public, and we have preferences and opinions about this stuff. And of course, they can't stand that. And that's really, I think, why the mansplaining thing was so triggering to them. Because that was actually, I think mansplaining as a concept has been used to weaponize, or as a weapon to shut down all masculine voices in the West, and especially in public speaking, entrepreneurs, politicians, anything like that. As a man, you're not allowed to have an opinion about women.
I think one of the things that comes up is a healthy relationship with your father, right? Like I'm and you might have seen what I posted today about my dad, but I'm a girl who adored her father. Like I was just mesmerized and in awe of who he was as a man. And if he ever wanted to explain something to me, I would sit there and just absorb everything that he had to say.
Yeah.
And he,
Some good, high quality mansplaining.
Exactly. So for women who don't want that in their lives, I just feel like they had a bad relationship with their father, or something happened that was probably traumatic, and that needs to get resolved.
I agree. Yeah, I have two sisters that I love very much, and they come to me. We talk all the time, and they ask me for advice. Even my older sister, who's 5 years older than me, she respects me as a man, especially now that we're both in our 30s, and it's a very positive thing. And to me, that's basically the heart of mansplaining. It's not all this, how it's so rare that you see a man talk condescendingly to a woman. This is ridiculous. This is like a cartoonish bullshit. Yeah. But there's plenty of fathers and grandfathers and uncles and brothers. I'm an uncle now.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. It's pretty awesome.
It is.
And it's a very positive thing. I think that's why feminists want to shut it down so hardcore. They're very, in my opinion, they have a philosophy of the zero. They want to zero everything out.
Right.
Zero masculinity, zero femininity, zero positivity between the genders, zero family formation. Half of them want to abolish the family, which is just fucking crazy. But yeah, it's a philosophy of the zero, and promoting this positivity and these positive things like men talking to women, like your father talking to you and you listening to him. Like you just said, like I could see you beaming up even thinking about it. Obviously he died, I don't know how many years ago, but I'm sure you look fondly on those memories and stuff.
Yes. And, just sort of segueing back to the mansplaining, like a woman who respects and admires her partner and he's mansplaining or whatever, like the actual term is just being a man and guiding and leading, right?
Yep.
Sometimes what a man will say might kind of, fall flat, but we still respect them and listen. You know, and so there's a skill to that. And it's just really about respect. When you respect someone, they don't have to be right all the time, but you hear them out and you have your chance to say your piece too. But you're not going to interrupt each other. You're not going to fight and struggle to like win an argument. So you just have to be more mature. Most people are not. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that they basically defamed masculine voices like that, and they've cartoonized them to be this like ridiculous condescending stuff, which is just not the case 95% of the time. Yeah, of course, sometimes if you're in a dick mood or something, or you just pop off. I mean, there's a level of polarity between men and women that makes some of this natural, I think, on occasion to happen. But by far and large, it doesn't happen in family relationships or in intimate relationships, unless it's toxic and unhealthy, in which case you have a larger problem.
Yeah, and I talk a lot about genuine desire, and that comes from Rollo as a reference from his stuff. But
he stole it from David D'Angelo, probably. Attraction is not a choice.
True. But now my piece is that I talk about how logic plus desire plus love equals an ideal relationship. And that's really because when we talk about genuine desire, we don't really talk about genuine interest.
And I thought your hypergamy just controlled everything you did. Are you sure about that?
I know, right? Well, I'm a divorced woman later in life, so of course, I don't know. That whole story, it didn't make any sense to me then. I understand what it means, but men have similar tendencies, and I know he's tried to debunk that. But we all try to upgrade until we look at ourselves and we try to correct ourselves and be the best person that we can be, and recognize that we can only require of other people what we do ourselves. And when we realize that, we become responsible, and then we earn what we deserve. And so until someone is willing to do that, they're going to be unhappy.
Yeah, this has been a fun conversation. I think we need to wind it down. I realize it's past 4 o'clock.
That's true. You too?
You have a lot of appointments, yeah. This has been a lot of fun. We should do it again sometime for sure. And I look forward to meeting you this year at 22 Convention. It's going to be a good time. Are you bringing your boyfriend, Dennis, you said?
He's supposed to come. So, I mean, he's got to prioritize his family. He's got 2 young nieces. So we'll see. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Cool. Yeah, he's an uncle. Yeah, there you go. Being an uncle is good stuff.
It is.
Well, I appreciate your time. Everybody watching the channel, you can go to we'll put her Twitter profile and website. It's already in the video description. Check those out. Follow her on Twitter. Follow her on Instagram. We'll put all the links Taylor, I appreciate your time. This has been genuinely like a lot of fun and pretty interesting.
You too, Anthony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The villain, Dr. Taylor Burrowes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I'll see you guys next time in the next live stream. Tune in tomorrow for the Red Band group with Jack Murphy and others. And we'll see Taylor again probably on the channel in the future. We'll talk about more mansplaining and things like that. Peace out, guys. Thank you, Taylor.
Ciao.